Hello and welcome back, this is ProTaleDev back with another Dungeon Farm Tycoon game, and this time we're going to be looking at the character inventory pretty much the entire time. I showed it off last video, but now I've kind of finished it, done all the equipment slots, and you can now kind of see that transition in the actual dungeon itself when I equip something. So I'm going to show that off now. So I'm also going to show off some animations because I've done a lot of animation work in this and I want to show that off too. So let's get straight into this section. So if I load up, this is our character inventory. So it's very different to the last time you saw it. These slots now all work. So I'm going to show that off now. So first of all, in the previous video, only this one was working. The other two had a few issues, and we didn't have the weapons sorted, nor did we have the armor section sorted. So now I do. So what we can do is we can actually equip our potions. Now immediately when I'm selecting and changing, you can actually see what is happening down here. These are what is going to be selected and kind of a little bit of description as you're scrolling through. So if we change to a hunger, you can see a little bit of description of what it actually does. If we switch to hydro, you can see it refreshes the body. Power increases the damage for long ranged, and of course the strength is melee ranged. So you can actually see what effect these actually do before equipping them. Let's say we want to equip it though. We want a weak health potion. As I mentioned in the previous video, you'll only be able to select one of each type to be equipped. This is so that you can just have a ton of really powerful potions and then just switch. I'm also going to disable the character inventory when you're in a dungeon. So if I quickly equip the weak strength potion, you'll see that it goes into our first slot. It's not the same colour, but the colour is only there just to distinguish the difference between them. They're actually going to look quite different when I actually design the icons myself. And let's say we got a hunger, we're going to equip a normal hunger potion, and let's go with a hydro strong potion. So now we have all of our three potions equipped. Imagine that they are the same colour as well. I did test that out previously and they were the same colour. I just removed that code because it isn't really necessary. It was just there for testing. And of course now we can actually equip our weapons. Our weapons are actually in. So we have our melee sword, we start off with a dagger, we have our sword, we have a sledgehammer, a maul, a mace, a thin sword, a razor sword, a wide sword, ridge sword, a cleaver cut, and a rapier. Now these are all going to have really a more of a customizable name. At the moment they're just kind of temporary placeholder names, and it's the same for the range. So you start off with a throwing dagger, then you have a throwing axe, a wind blade, a air pierce, a split blade, a life staff, water staff, and a scorch staff. Now we can equip any one of these. For example, if I equip the scorch staff, you'll see that it'll go in there, and if we equip the rapier, it'll go in there as well. We can always change these, so if we have the cleaver cut or maybe the dagger for throwing, these will still go in there, and as you can see, you can equip them into here. So with that in mind, what about the armor? Now the armor is a little bit different. So now of course we can clear them, and clearing them only clears these sections. In the previous video I was going to allow you to have and change your armor manually and choose whatever you want. However, I've made it so that they're specifically tied to the character. So if I set these back up the same way, and then we just choose these, whatever we feel like choosing. Of course, I've got the scroll bar here so you can scroll through them, and if we ever add any other types of, like maybe weapons or more types of potions, we can obviously increase that section with the scroll. But more importantly, the armor. So here we have our character with our character description, and we have our armor, which is currently equipped, which is this one, which is payback. So pick up 5% more gold from monsters. This is associated specifically with the villager class character. So if we change our character now, we're now a villager still. This armor did change, however we've still got the same effect. I'm probably going to have a different effect for each character, that way it's more of a variety. They do have a short description. Now we changed to a female knight, and again their own description, but they also have their own effect, type of armor. So now it's turned red. Of course, this armor hasn't changed, but as you can see, it's a different armor. So Iron Guard, take less damage from monsters. Again, male knight doesn't have any difference, but you can see that they are changing the armor based on color here. Again, the color is really temporary. They're all going to have their own maybe different type of look, but as you can see, we got the Dragonkin, and theirs is hardened scales, so less exhaustion and fatigue within a dungeon. And then you got the male version, and of course you've got the wizards, which is cooldown on staff's abilities is reduced. As you can see, as you change to different characters, you get different armor effects. So now what we've got to do is, that's pretty much what I've got for the character. All of this is being tracked, and there's not, and it's all working. So now let me also show you what we've got for this section. So before we had the dungeon manager, and this hasn't changed. Let me just get rid of that. Except for the fact that it's now working. There is still a lighting bug, but it only occurs every now and again. So here we go. We have just placed down another dungeon, and we can go in here and see that our dungeon manager now has that dungeon. It did have that before, but you'll see that the 4 buttons that were showing have now been fixed. So now only one button will show. This is the edit dungeon, and it makes sense that this is what would only show, because obviously we haven't created any dungeon yet. You shouldn't be able to see any of the other buttons. If we now go into the dungeon, you can see that everything is highlighted, it's all working. I'll talk about this UI in a minute, but for now let's just try and quickly show you what we've got for our dungeon. So of course we can place things. This hasn't really changed very much. There's still some bugs with it, but for the most part this is all working. However, we're going to go as far away as we can over here, and I'm going to show you what I've also done. So this is all now working. Let's close this off. So now we can actually have our monster in here. So if I click on this little devil, the young devil, we'll be able to place this into our dungeon, the spawn points, and you'll be able to see the spawn points. This is different to what you had before. Hopefully you can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit and go up here. So as you can see, we're now placing down spawn points for our monster. Putting quite a lot of them and trying to get to this room. Obviously we'll see a horde of monsters in a minute, but that's it will be a good example. So once we've clicked off that and we've placed our monsters that we want, what we can then do is exit the dungeon. Let's say we're finished with this dungeon, we can now exit. Only this button will show, and it'll be the same for all of these that you've filled out, all these slots. So if we exit the dungeon now, of course we can go back and we can handle our island, but we can also then go back into our dungeon. Another thing I haven't mentioned is that we've got these buttons up here for all of our different UI. So if I click on our character inventory, you can bring that up. I did show that briefly a second ago. We can also click on our potions, which I've deactivated at the moment. Same with the weapons, crafting, and the armor. I'll show that in a minute. But what we can do is we can go into our start adventure and close this off. And now that we're in our start adventure, you can see we've equipped our weapons. So we've got a sledgehammer here. And if I go into our character inventory, which we won't be able to do later, you can see we've got our sledgehammer and our axe. Obviously, just pressing the left mouse click will use its ability and attack. And as you can see our monster is now coming over, young devil, and you can see the actual canvas. Now these things aren't really doing any damage yet. They're not really functional. Obviously they're moving towards me, and they do have their health bar. They also have their level and effect, but nothing's really functional yet. It's just the very basics. Now, what about this UI at the bottom? Now, to show that off, let's also enable some of the UI that I've disabled. So now I'm going to quickly show that you can click these buttons to enable the crafting as well. So the crafting is the same as before for the potions. So if I show the potions, it's pretty much the same. Obviously you can create your own individual potions. Not too much has changed with these. However, you can just come back to them like I mentioned previously in the previous video, but you can also do the same now for the weapons and for the armor. So I'm not too sure if I'll make it so that you can still craft your own armor and they'll be available to certain characters, we'll see, but for the most part the weapon crafting and the potion crafting is still going to be in the game. The weapon crafting, it will allow you to be able to, of course, go into your character inventory and choose what weapons you want to be able to equip. Inside of our player HUD will be our health, our thirst, and our hunger bars. We also have the slots for what is equipped. These aren't functional yet, I'm working on them, but for the most part the health and the thirst and hunger is. So I'm just going to show that very, very briefly. I believe that is in, and that is on our player. So what I'm going to do here is quickly show it. So it is draining very, very slowly. At least our hunger is. Our thirst has already hit bottom, and you can see that it's actually showing the percentage, which is a really nice touch on our bars as well. So as you can see, as it slowly drops down, you'll see that the percentage changes on them. We've also got the health, which can also drop. And as it drops down, you can see the percentage as well. When it hits 0, it restarts the scene for now. The last thing I'm going to show is the actual weapons themselves and the animations on the animation controller. So most of the animations are actually on the hold, and that's because most of the weapons are rotating or controlled, and this is our center controller, essentially. Everything underneath I can then control and manipulate on its own and separately. Of course, this leaves some issues with some of the ranged weapons being thrown, but for the most part, it's pretty. It works pretty well. So if I enable, let's say, the dagger, and then I show what it looks like with just the animation. This is its idle, and then what we can actually show is we can show some of the other animations. So, what about the dagger throwing? This is the dagger swing, and we can actually show this more a more full option is to show you controller itself. So this is all of our animations that we've got so far. We've got the idle state for most weapons, and then it switches to, say, the dagger swing, the dagger throwing, the dagger sword, and then we have the split blade, which I'll show in a second. And of course we've got things like the sledgehammer, which goes to a sledgehammer idle, and then switching to the actual swing, the rapier, and the staffs have their own individual idle states, which then switch to their attack state. So let's show them off. Let's show some of these off, and let's show off more of the interesting ones, like the rapier and some of the other ones. Get rid of that, and so what I can do is I can show off individual ones. So we have the rapier's idle state, and then we can switch to the rapier lunge. So then we have the lunge. What about the scorch staff? Show off the scorch staff because they have a different idle stance as well. And all of the staffs have the same idle stance, so I don't need to show them off again. So this is its idle staff state, and then we can have a look at the actual effects of each one. So we have the light staff. And again, it doesn't really matter which staff is active because the same animation plays on all of them. But we can have a look at what it looks like there. So that's the effect. The next one is the water staff, which we can show on here. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Then we have on here is the, like I said, the water staff. There it is. Which is quite a nice one. We have the Scotch staff, which I showed for a second. I'll show it again. And then go on here, go on Scotch staff. There it is. I've already shown the sledgehammer slam, so I won't show that again. But my favourite so far is the split blade. After this, you've got a good idea of what I've done, so I'll leave it at that. So let's show off the split blade. This took a little bit longer, as you can see with all these animation keyframes. Let's show that off. So this is the split blade. So that is some of the animations I've done. I'll probably go over it a little bit more when everything is working together. But this has been ProTaleDev, and I'll see you next time.